Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
She was still sleepwalking along the giddy heights of a lost career, playing crazy when it came to that one subject, her celluloid self.
Hello, and welcome to Film Church Radio. This is the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday. I'm Branden.
I'm Lewis.
And we're here to talk about movies. Each week, Lewis and I alternate picking a film for both of us to watch and discuss. And this is our last film of Noirvember. And today I picked the 1950 film Sunset Boulevard, directed by Billy Wilder and starring Gloria Swanson, William Holden, Eric von Stroheim, and Nancy Olson. I have never seen this film before, or before we, watched it yesterday. Yeah. and Lewis had. It was hard finding a film that Lewis hadn't seen, film noir that Lewis hadn't seen, or any film of, the olden days for that matter. But yeah, we did do a Billy Wilder discussion a few months back on The Apartment, and I really liked that film, and have been wanting to get more into Wilder. So today we're getting Wilder, and it's going to be a good discussion. Of course, as always, stay tuned till the end of the episode if you want to hear what we're watching next week. Get ahead of the game. Watch along with us and join the discussion. If you want to join the discussion, you can jump over to our YouTube channel and leave us a comment on this podcast video. You won't be able to see our faces there on this episode, but you can see our faces on some of the episodes, particularly the ones where we have guests, which is always the first Sunday of every month. You can also find us on all other social media platforms at Film Church Radio. And yeah, we do stuff there. Of course, now it's time for the trailers, also known as other movies that Lewis and I have watched this week, other than our main feature discussion today. So, Lewis, what's going on? What have you been watching?
First of all, happy Thanksgiving. We've just passed Thanksgiving, so just want to throw that out there to the Film Church congregation. And I'm very thankful.
Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I was going to say I'm very thankful that that there's so many great noir films out there.
Yeah. That's a great thing to be thankful for. I'm thankful for this podcast.
I'm thankful for that too. I think that I was worried about kind of jumping in and being too I love this podcast so much. So I was I'm just going to say noir films because I just love them so much.
Yeah. You can love multiple things. You can be thankful for multiple things on Thanksgiving. Yeah,
that's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thankful for everything related to film. So this past week, I've been just watching more noir films. You know how it is. It's kind of it sucks me in, and I just can't get out of it. So I watched Brighton Rock from 1948, an English noir film that I've had on my list for quite a while, starring Richard Attenborough, who is the old guy in Jurassic Park. But this is kind of one of his early kind of career-making films. He plays a gangster called Pinky, who is pretty young and takes over a kind of gang in Brighton in England. And it's just a really interesting character study. His gang commits a murder and they're trying to cover it up, and the only way to do that is to woo the one witness who's a female. And it's always one of those things where I watch a film that wasn't made in America, and I'm just amazed at what they could say and get away with compared
Yeah.
to like American films. You know, there's a few points in there where I was like, oh, you can't say that. This is a 40s movie, you know. But I had a really good time with it. It's a lot of fun, and the characters are not straightforward, you know, one-dimensional. They're very multi-layered, and there's a lot going on with them. And it was one of those films that, because I've had it on my watch list for a while, it did live up to the hype that I put on it. So I was really pleased to kind of knock that one off. And then I watched one of my favorites. Fritz Lang is a huge influence on like the films that I like and kind of the periods of cinema that I'm really drawn to. And I watched The Woman in the Window from 1944, starring Edward G. Robinson, who's also in Double Indemnity, directed by Wilder. He sees a portrait of a woman in the window and then meets that woman, and ends up with having to dispose of a body. It's a really interesting, tight kind of thriller. And I put it on our Twitter as one of my favorite noirs because it really is. But the ending now, I'm not going to give anything away, but the ending now does seem cliche. But I think at the time it was a bit of a revelation. It wasn't, you know, something that everybody had seen. I'm trying not to give it away, but yeah, and I think it works. I mean, it doesn't take anything away from me. If anything, the ending is like, oh, thank goodness, you know. So, yeah. But yeah, I think it's only like 90 minutes. It's really tight and fun, and just a good example of what Lang could do with, you know, a smaller budget and some A-list talent.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend anyone checking it out if you've still got time in Noirvember or outside Noirvember, you know, whenever. And then I'm reading again one of my favorite biographies of a Hollywood star ever written, Lee Sturver's book on Robert Mitchum called Baby I Don't Care. Robert Mitchum is just the coolest man that has ever walked the earth, and his story is so interesting. At like 15 years old, he left home and became like a hobo, and just like traveled on like boxcars and around the world, you know, around the US on his own. And there's just so much to him. Like, he's just so nonchalant. So I watched Out of the Past from 1947, his big noir film, also starring Kirk Douglas before he was famous.
Okay. Nice.
In a big meaty part as well. And the plot is so convoluted, like so much happens in this, and like you've got to really pay attention to where it's going, because it's in the past and then it's in the present, and then the character's in a different country, and then the backing, you know, it's just like so much happens. Yeah. But it's such a fun ride, you know. Mm-hmm. And Robert Mitchum is just the epitome of cool to me. I just love him. Love him so much.
That's awesome.
So yeah, they were the three that I watched this week, and we've still got a few days left. So I'm still going to try and fit in the two biggies for me, Double Indemnity and The Big Heat.
Nice.
They're two of my favorite all-time noirs. So going to fit those in before the end of the month. But yeah, that's the ones I've been watching. What have you been watching, Branden?
Well, as I said, I'm thankful for Film Church, and I always say that when I haven't watched any other films this week other than the film that we're talking about today, which is what happened this week. But I did watch Sunset Boulevard twice. So, you know, we'll have a lot to talk about. But, yeah, as far as TV goes, I have still been watching The Good Place on Netflix with Sarah. That's been kind of our show that we've been watching lately. We're on I think we just started season 3. It's got Ted Danson in it and Kristen Bell. And, yeah, it's been really good. It's been interesting. It's like one of those shows where you watch the first episode and you're like, how are there 4 seasons of this?
Yeah.
Because it's so kind of like simple plot wise, and like you get it and everything, but it's like, how, like, this can't drag out for 4 seasons. Like, how can they do that? And even, you know, by the time you get to the end of season 1 and you get to season 2, it's like, well, that was everything you could do, right? Yeah. So it's been really interesting to see where they go with it, and how how good the show continues to be and stay and stuff throughout the seasons. Yeah, so it's been great. And then we also watched. There's only one season of it. Over the Garden Wall, it's on Hulu. And it has Elijah Wood and Melanie Linsky in it, and Christopher Lloyd. It's like a cartoon, kind of like fantasy, like, I don't know. It's like this kind of like, it's hard to describe. It's like fantasy, psychedelic, dark cartoon. And this was something that my sister had suggested because someone suggested it to her. One of her friends that I guess watches this every October during horror season. And it was great. It was a really good show. I think the episodes were only like 11 minutes long, and there's like 10 of them. So it's basically the length of a movie.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, really great.
That's awesome. I feel like as soon as you said it, I could like picture some of the characters, I guess, but I've never seen. I think Mondo maybe did a few like pins or like the soundtrack for it on vinyl, maybe. And that's where I've seen it. But yeah, I've heard of it. I've just never. I didn't even know it was a miniseries.
Yeah. It's just one little 10-episode miniseries. Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, the episodes are short enough that you could throw one on and not take up too much time. But we of course just binged the whole thing because it was basically like watching a movie. So
yeah.
And Elijah Wood is amazing, and I also like Melanie Linsky a lot. She's in Heavenly Creatures, and she's in another film with Elijah Wood. I think it's, what is the name of that movie? I think it's called I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. It's like one of those long Netflix titles. But I remember really liking it. Yeah.
I feel like she's really good in a lot of stuff. She always pops up. It's more like a character actress, I guess. It's more kind of like a supporting role, but every time she's in it, I'm like, oh, cool. I like her,
Yeah. She's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely like, it's a good, little show to put on if you're looking for something short and fun.
Yeah.
And it's a little spooky, but it's not like adult. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you could watch this with kids.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I don't know. You might want to just check it out yourself before you just take my word for it. But I mean, depends on how easily your child is scared of things.
She's not that scared of things. I mean, her favorite game is to hide under blankets, and it's like a weird home invasion game. I don't know. This is probably too much, but yeah, she likes to hide under blankets and whisper, "They're coming." So
nice. Well, that's fun. I mean, yeah, she might like it.
Yeah, let's give it a
go. But yeah, that is it for me.
Cool. I've also been watching the first few episodes of Andor.
Oh yeah, I have. We haven't talked about this, but I did start it as well.
Cool.
How far into it are you?
I am. Is 4 episodes or 5 episodes? I want to say I've watched 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're like planning this heist.
Yes.
Where you're at?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I have watched 10 episodes.
Wow.
And when I started it, I was like, oh, there's only 10 episodes. Or not, there's only 10 episodes. I was like, oh, there's 10 episodes. As in more than I thought there would be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because usually these Disney shows are like, yeah, here's season 1. It's 6 episodes or 8 episodes, So to see 10, I was like, okay, cool. And then I got to episode 10 and I was like, so there's going to be a season 2, right? And then I looked it up, and it's like, yeah, there's going to be a season 2, and there's still 2 more episodes coming. So it's actually a 12 episode season. And there's going to be 2 seasons. So I was like, well, that makes more sense, because, I mean, it's been great so far, but that was a weird, unsatisfying ending to the season.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to seeing the last 2 episodes. I really like it so far. It's one of those shows that's like, every episode is so different, but still very engaging,
Yeah. I think it's one of those where it's quite refreshing to just get away from like name drops from people we know.
Yeah.
I said to Chelsea, I still think that we should get away from the Skywalker era and just move away so that it's all new characters. But I know what they're doing. They're just building that fan base, building reliable content, I guess, before they start pushing the boat out, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it's good.
Yeah, it's been great. Cool.
Just thought I'd drop that in there. Hopefully we can finish it pretty soon and we can talk a little bit about it on the show. But
yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting that I am hosting today, and if you're wondering why, I'm just like,
and pause.
But
this does feel like a very Lewis pick. That's probably it. You're like,
yeah.
I didn't pick this story.
I mean, and you've seen this film, I'm guessing, more than a few times. So, I'm excited to hear what you think about it. And with that, it's time for our feature presentation, everyone. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. A Hollywood story. A hack screenwriter writes a screenplay for a former silent film star who has faded into Hollywood obscurity. It was great! So, yeah, like, it was good.
Yeah.
As I expected. I didn't really know what to expect going into this movie. The poster looked cool and stuff. And we're going to get into spoilers right away, just so you know, listener. So if you hear about that, now you know. I remember when I was in college, like my first semester of like community college, my graphic design professor he actually had a degree in film. That was his background. And so we would talk about film a lot. And I remember him mentioning just in a conversation, and maybe he said the name of the movie, but I had forgotten, but I remembered this detail that there's a famous movie where there's a narrator who, by the end of the film, you realize he's been dead this whole time, and you're like, well, how is he narrating?
Yeah.
So when the film started and the guy's in the pool, and this guy's narrating, and then it cuts from there to him saying, well, let me go back to where it all started. I'm a, writer, and I can't sell my scripts. I was like, I wonder if this is that movie. And I think it is.
Yeah.
Based on, the whole story and where it went and stuff. But, obviously Gloria Swanson's performance is kind of what this movie is all about. And her story and the fading Hollywood of the silent era, which you can draw parallels between, any changing era in Hollywood, or, not even just Hollywood, but, life in general and generations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of this movie is still kind of processing in my head, but I think that's a good thing. Obviously, it's like, Gloria Swanson, her acting and her performance is awesome, but I'm also kind of torn because everybody else in this film is also so great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the guy that's been narrating this whole film he's kind of the character that you latch onto mostly.
Yeah.
So then by the end of the film, you're like left wanting more. Because we don't find out what happens to Betty. I mean, you can assume, but but I think that's for the better. It's like it's probably a good thing that you're left wanting more, because then you just go back and watch and watch and watch. So when did you first see this film, and how many, is this like one of your favorite films ever? And like, how many times have you seen it? I assume you own it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing about owning it, I do own it. The trouble is, I feel like there should be a better DVD, like Blu-ray version than there is. It should be in one of it should be in Criterion. It should be in somewhere that has a really nice edition, which it isn't, unfortunately. There are like Blu-rays and stuff. I first watched this in my first year at university. I can remember sitting in my dorm room, watching it on my laptop, like at my desk, and just being like, holy smokes, this is amazing. It's just incredible. Probably around the same time, I know that last week we talked about me watching The Third Man and not really liking it. It was probably around the same time that I watched this. And the poster, because I bought the DVD, so it had the poster in it, and it was like just a small like A4 poster. But I had that on my wall like every year at university. It was something that I kept up. I've seen this film a lot of times, and I think like knowing me and my love of like silent film and classic film, it just marries everything so well together, and there's so many nods in there to an era that's already passed in 1950 and has become obsolete. But there's so many people in there, like there's so many references, and like all the actors' names that they drop are real people, and like it's just a film that's really knowing and is constantly nodding at the audience. And for people like me, I just get a kick out of it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's kind of the perfect film for people that love the silent era and just Hollywood and film in general. Because there's all this behind the scenes stuff within the story. And people who love film noir, it's like this well crafted, like, you've got your main kind of slick guy that, and this narration over the whole thing, it's got the tone and everything that you love about a film noir. So it's kind of the perfect film for you.
It is.
It was great. So tell me, or tell us, the listeners, what what all the references are, for people that might not know some of the name drops and some of the cameos and stuff like that. What who's in this and what is their significance?
Well, let's start with Gloria Swanson. So Gloria Swanson obviously was a huge silent film actress. The film that they show within this film that she like screams for Joe is actually one of her films. I think Queen Christina, which was directed by Erich von Stroheim, and she got him fired from the set because he was... von Stroheim was very famous for kind of going over budget and like making ridiculously long films. I think the film Greed, the first cut of that was like 6 hours long. And this was in like the early 20s. He was very famous for kind of just for shooting because it's based on a book, Greed. He shot pretty much every single page. to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
So Gloria Swanson got him fired from that because the budget was ballooning, and she wanted. He was kind of presenting her as a woman of the night, I guess, and she didn't want to do that anymore. She'd kind of made her name playing those characters. She wanted to break away. So she got him fired, and they never really talked about it again. But the fact is that film that he's projecting for her to show this guy is just mind-blowing to me. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. I had no idea that. I mean, obviously he has this line, Eric von Stroheim, in the film where he says that he was like her first husband.
Yeah.
And he used to be a director, and that, you know, he says there was D.W. Griffith and someone else, can't remember, and then his character. But yeah, I had no idea that he was actually a director that like had directed Gloria Swanson. That makes it even more meta. They're doing meta insane before it's like popular. Like that's the whole thing right now.
And I always think about that. I'm just like, what is Wilder saying about the role of a director? If people have forgotten about Norma Desmond, but Max is like not even recognized on the lot anymore. He's not even like on the radar. Yeah. He said that he had like the whole row above hers in the bungalow, so he must have been a pretty popular director. And he's just like, nobody cares that he's a butler anymore. Yeah. You know, so I always find that dynamic really interesting.
Yeah. But also her other director, Cecil B. DeMille, is still working and
making films.
Still making films. So
yeah. Crazy. Because they work together as well. So Gloria Swanson and Cecil B. DeMille work together quite a few times, and I think he calls her in the film. I can't remember what the nickname is, but he calls her like his real nickname for her in the film. So there's all these kind of like little things in there. And then, did you notice the waxworks? The three people that are sitting around playing, is it bridge, I think?
Yes. Well, I figured all of them were famous cameos, but the one that I noticed right off the bat was Buster Keaton. I was like, oh shit, it's Buster. There he is.
Yeah. And that's the one really that cool. I kind of gravitated towards for the most, you know. The woman is Anna Q. Nielsen, who I'm not that familiar with. I haven't seen much of her work, but the other guy is H.B. Warner, who did a lot of like silent film. He was like a leading man, and then when sound came, because he was getting on, he kind of regressed, I should say, back to like supporting roles. And he's the chemist, the druggist in It's a Wonderful Life, Mr. Gower.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that's always cool. Pops up, and I'm like, it's Mr. Gower, you know. But yeah, so all of those were leading silent film stars.
Yeah, A-listers at one point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That makes it so much more interesting. I mean, this is like I feel like such a rare film.
Yeah.
To kind of be, be about this subject matter, but then the people that are in it lived it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it wasn't a million miles away. I mean, we talked a little bit about Buster and his career, but in the end, he was like an alcoholic living not in the end of his life, but in the end of his career, he was, an alcoholic living in a trailer outside of the studio. Yeah. And just kind of forgotten about. And I think that the one thing with the film is I think that it tends to have people think about. It's a bit like Singing in the Rain. You think about that transition to sound, and it's like, well, if you had a terrible voice, you didn't make the transition, and this is kind of like if you were a silent star, people forgot about you. And it's not necessarily true. I mean, it did happen obviously to quite a few people, but I mean, Gloria Swanson, for example, she was like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go to New York and be on the stage and have my own beauty line. And, she was still pretty famous at this point. You know, she wasn't like forgotten about at all. So
right.
yeah. But her performance is so strong and so good that it's hard to separate the character from her.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially if you don't know anything about her or the history. I mean, like people, there's plenty of people still alive today that might, remember her and well, not from the, the silent era necessarily, but remember this film and stuff. But yeah, I mean, as far as I go, like I didn't know much or really anything about any of the people in this film except for like Buster Keaton and some of the name drops and stuff. So yeah, that makes it really it makes it all the more better. It's like it kind of makes you think too, just as a filmmaker, like that that everything's been done already. Like I was saying, like doing this whole like meta thing is like what everyone is trying to do right now, I think. But it's done perfectly here already. It's like it's also like when we watched Brain Dead, it was like, why would you ever consider making a zombie movie after that? It's like the zombie movie to end all zombie movies.
Exactly.
And this is like the Hollywood movie to end all Hollywood movies. But obviously that's not true. There's still plenty of places to go and stuff, and people are inspired by they might take something from one film and be inspired to branch off and make a whole nother thing out of it. But I mean, as far as like aging actors, or just aging entertainers or directors or whatever, people or celebrity, I guess, just in general, whether it be acting or TikToking or, whatever it is someone might do. Sometimes they have like these big moments and then they're just always chasing that again. And it's sometimes hard. Like sometimes those moments are just lightning in a bottle and you can't, you can hope, to hit that again, but you kind of just have to be content with, working, and creating, and, sometimes things hit in a big way and sometimes they don't. But I mean, it seems like there's so many actors that do kind of fade out, at least from like the spotlight anyway. It's always interesting to think about some of the young people and famous actors coming up today and being like, I wonder how many of these people are still going to be like the A-list grabs. In
20 years.
Or even 10. You know what I mean? Like, because there's so many people that in the 90s and the 2000s that were just, in everything, that you just don't see anymore. And it's not that they're not working. It's just that, the things that they're doing aren't like hitting or whatever. And, it's also, I mean, it's also just a weird time, in today's movie world where the people that were A-list actors are making Netflix films and not going to theaters, and that's also weird because that's, I don't know, it's like hard to tell what's what. I don't know.
There's no like route to stardom anymore, or path that you should take if you're a Hollywood star. It's everybody is doing kind of their own thing now and what they want to do.
It's like you almost have to do like so much extra work as a celebrity to stay in the spotlight beyond being in a big film. You have to like have some, brand or like
social media presence or
exactly. It's kind of crazy. But I mean, just the progression of like Gloria Swanson's performance. I mean, it just gets it just gets so crazy over time. But like, you know, it starts off like he kind of lays it out in the beginning, when he first gets to the house, and he's like describing the house as like the mansion and great expectations, and you know the crazy woman inside, and that first shot of her just in the window with her her round sunglasses, just like kind of tells you everything you need to know and where it's going. And then you know, I like the creepiness of it in that whole first scene, when he goes inside, and Eric von Stroheim is like, if you need help with the coffin, let me know. And you're like, what? And then he goes upstairs and you know, meets Norma Desmond for the first time, and she's there with the body of a chimp.
Yeah.
And it's just like that was also very like disturbing and creepy, and just there to be disturbing and creepy like that. The chimp never comes back up.
No.
Like after like there's a you know you see a little scene where they're like he's looking out the window and he sees them burying the chimp, but you know after that it's like it's never brought up again.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, who was this chimp? Like, was that her third husband?
Dude, there's actually like theories online that, you know,
that was her third husband.
I mean, yeah, but I think that's just rubbish. Personally, you know,
she was like, write me a story.
The monkey scene is very kind of unsettling from the start. But it does have one of my favorite Billy Wilder stories. So when they're burying the monkey in the back garden or the front garden, the cameraman was like, I'm not sure like how to light this or like how to stage it. Like, what would you suggest? And Wilder was just like, it's just your average monkey funeral. Just shoot it like that. Which is the most unhelpful like direction ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that's like so weird in itself that like I don't think you could really go wrong with lighting it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it does like you know, on reflection of the film bring up all of these questions, because it's like you can imagine that she had a very close relationship with this chimp. And all the scenes where she's like watching her own movies and like putting on balls and dancing with Joe.
Yeah.
You can imagine that she did all of those things with the chimp.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, she's dressing up as Charlie Chaplin for the chimp, and she's, you know, having him like hold her hand while she's writing Salome. You know, like he probably has been there for, I mean, I don't know how long chimps live, but quite a while, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like knocking around this house with her.
Yeah.
Because I don't think she goes out a lot because the car's like under tarp and stuff when they first get there. So I don't think she ventures out very much. And, you know, her only company is Max and a chimp. So,
This is honestly one of those movies where I could see Netflix or somebody easily snatching up the rights to it and making a prequel series about her her three husbands.
Yeah. Just the house slowly falling to bits. And
exactly. Yeah. Her getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah. I think the more I watch it, the more sad it makes me for her. You know, because she's definitely framed as like the crazy, you know, and she's kind of unstable and stuff. But I think Joe is as bad. He lets this happen. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that there's like sexual relations between the two of them throughout the whole movie. You know, he's just using her for the money and the, you know, and the roof, I guess.
Yeah.
And and then there's the scene where she goes to the film studio, and it's so, I think it's just one of the most beautifully done scenes because everybody recognizes her. When the spotlight's on her, they all know who she is.
Yeah, she gets her moment.
Yeah, and it's it's not because and she's always talking about the fans, and Max is like, oh, I write the
fan
postmarks are from me kind of thing, but she hasn't been forgotten, and I think that's such a nice touch, is that she's just not front and center, and that's the problem. When people step out of the spotlight, people move on, and they have new people that they can gravitate towards, and that's the sad nature of the film industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's clearly not well.
Mm-hmm.
Her mental health has gone in great decline.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is cool that she's she does get her moment when she goes to the studio and people recognize her and stuff and treat her well, and simultaneously not well. But it's what would have happened maybe if somebody had really cared about her and tried to help her out early on.
Yeah.
You know. But also it's in that moment, you also get your answer for why nobody helped her out. Because in that moment of of the director being nice to her and stuff and trying to beat around the bush of we're not going to make your terrible script. He's trying to be super nice. She's and remember, I don't work before 10:30 in the morning and past 4 o'clock in the evening. She just turns on this total angry command.
Yeah.
And you're I don't want to work with you.
And you get the impression that part of this is self-inflicted, that as soon as, the talkies, quote unquote, kept coming in, she probably took less and less because, she says herself that, the silence would it was art, and then everyone started talking. So I read into that she's she chose to step away and kind of waited for Hollywood to come banging back on the door, we need you, you were right. And
this dialogue sucks, help.
Yeah, and it's just not, it just hasn't happened for many reasons. But yeah, I mean, to her credit though, when she does think the film's getting made, I mean, the beauty regimen she goes through and the discipline for her to be I've got to get back into top shape for this. It shows a lot about the professional that she is. She may have stipulations, but there's no doubt that she would have shown up on set every day.
Yeah. And gave a great performance.
Yeah. She's, I mean, Norma Desmond is one of the most interesting and, I don't know, just layered characters. We were talking about Quinlan from Touch of Evil last week. Mm-hmm. For me, this is on the same level. She's not on screen enough, and she's in it for 95% of this film. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's an incredible performance.
Yeah, it's an incredible nuanced performance as well, because it seems I mean, in every shot, whether she's got dialogue or not, she is just has this incredible screen presence, you know, just her eyes and her expressions and everything that she's doing. But I mean, as we know, she's from that silent film era where that's what you did, that's
exactly
that's her training.
That's what I was going to say. I don't know if that's, I mean, I assume it's Wilder's direction because, as we know, when it's written on the page, he didn't let anyone change a word or even the way the words were formed. It was I've written them this way for a reason. You're going to say it that way. So I assume that it's kind of his direction. But yeah, the fact that she is all eyes and hands and, she bares her teeth a lot. It is such a emotive silent film performance. Yeah. Even when she's talking, where Joe Gillis is very mumble and doesn't really show that much emotion throughout the film. Yeah. Yeah. So,
well, according to Gloria Swanson's daughter, Michelle Amon, Her mother stayed in character throughout the entire shoot, even speaking like Norma Desmond when she arrived home in the evening after filming. On the last day of shooting, Swanson drove back to the house she, her mother, and daughter shared during the production, announcing there were only 3 of us in it now, meaning that Norma Desmond had taken her leave.
Yeah.
So
That's
she
incredible.
went full method, apparently,
Yeah.
on this film. Which had to have been creepy on set. but maybe fun, probably fun mostly.
From what I've read, from what she herself has said, that the making of this film was the best time she's ever had. Everybody would just pulling in the right direction. They kind of knew what they wanted to make, and it ended up being exactly that. And she said that when she did the Chaplin, when she pretended to be Chaplin for Joe and was like doing the whole thing, the next day when she came onto set, everybody was wearing little bowler hats, including the stuffed monkey that they used. And she just was like, it was the biggest compliment, because you could tell that they just, like, they had loved it.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy that, like, I don't know, the set was a nice environment.
Yeah.
For sure. It was just such a good experience to come back and do a film like this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because it could easily have been terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like it would have been, like, just based on, like, I don't know, everything we as film lovers hear about Hollywood and film productions and stuff. This feels like it would have been a set that would have been very tense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or something. But yeah, it's great to hear that.
I mean, the original film that, like, Wilder and his co-writer Brackett kind of originally started writing was supposed to be a comedy. It was supposed to be about a silent film actress that was just trying to get back into the talkies. That was kind of what they were going for. And then it slowly developed over time to be like, we need a little, we can't make this relationship between a scriptwriter and an older actress work for comedy. It needs to be a little bit of a darker feel.
Yeah.
Because originally it was Mae West that was supposed to be the Norma Desmond character, which Mae West is a very famous sultry actress. She was famous for being very sexual towards people, and did a lot of kind of like comedies, kind of pre-code stuff, which would have been a completely different film. But the names that I heard for Joe Gillis before it actually went to William Holden, the first was Montgomery Clift, who would have been incredible as Joe Gillis, I think. Just the most, it would have worked so well between them, because he's got that real face of kind of anxiety, to put it nice.
Yeah.
And he was, like, signed on to do it, and then he kind of dropped out and was like, I don't think anyone would think it was believable if I was dating an older woman, which seemed like a bizarre reason to drop out anyway. But then, now that we know that he was having an affair with an older woman, and she told him not to do the part because she didn't want people to find out about him.
Yeah.
So he dropped out, and Billy Wilder went looking for somebody else. And I have heard rumors that Marlon Brando was attached at some point, but I don't know if it's too early for Brando. I think that's just wishful thinking.
Yeah, maybe. I feel like it just wouldn't have worked because, although the character is great, Marlon Brando is also a scene stealer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
then that set might have been would have been tense and crazy. I mean, especially because Brando is known for not saying word for word the way the script is written. He goes off and exactly. Like, I mean, they never worked together, I'm sure, right?
No,
I don't think so.
Didn't.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that the way that we're going, if those two, if Brando especially is true, for me is the one flaw because Joe Gillis is just too old. I think that if Joe Gillis had been 25, just come to Hollywood, just trying to make it, that little tweak, I think that would have added an extra layer to that relationship. But when you see them dancing, they just look like the same age. It's the Joe Gillis Betty Schaefer relationship that's the troublesome one.
Yeah,
because he does look just so much older, and I know that that's Hollywood standards of the 50s.
Yeah,
but yeah, I wish that maybe they'd cast someone who is a little bit younger.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have made a little more sense. Or I see what you're saying, because it would have made a little more sense and also made it a little more tense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the whole time they're kind of being like, Norma is so old, but she's not really that old.
Did you catch how old she was at the end?
Well, there is that line where he's like, there's nothing wrong with being 50 unless you're trying to be 25.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing she was like 50.
Yeah, she is just 50 years old.
Yeah.
But she's treated like she's decrepit.
An old lady.
Yeah.
Which is also just, I don't know. We were talking about like last week or a couple weeks ago about the film X and Barbarian, where, the horror movie trope right now is that, ooh, old people are gross. Which is just like, it's just something we need to get away from, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
As a society,
Yeah.
It's like, here's an old person, horror movie.
Yeah. Thankfully, they never go that route with this one. They never turn Norma into a it's
just like, but I do appreciate that line, where he's like, there's nothing wrong with being 50 unless you're trying to be 25. Like, I think that that's such a perfect like summary.
Yeah, it is.
That I'm like, at least they were thinking in that direction,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I just want to say that I know that it's supposed to be like Joe Gillis is supposed to feel trapped. This sounds like my idea of heaven. To be in an old Hollywood mansion watching silent films projected, with someone buying me clothes all the time, and
getting paid to write, no matter if it's terrible or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just imagine like having like stacks of the worst screenplay ever and being like, I'm being paid to literally just make this not as terrible as it is now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's it's a golden position.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's complaining about. I would have been like, yep, put down the suitcase, Max, I'll carry it myself.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not I mean, he complains a lot during the movie, but I mean, he's
yeah, he's doing it. I love it's like the critical scene of him when they're going to get him fitted for everything. And that like smarmy salesman comes over and he's like, here's 2 coats and here's the camel hair, but this one is a little bit more expensive but feels better. And he's like, oh, just the camel hair. And he's like, just get the other one. The woman's paying. And and Joe Gillis is so offended, and I'm like, but she is. He's got a point. She would. She'd buy it.
I can see where like a younger character that's like a little more like doesn't really know how to like take ownership.
Yeah.
Or stick up for himself or something.
Has not necessarily started it for the money. I think if you got like a young screenwriter that was like, I'm going to work with this big name and she wants me to write a script, and then slowly descends into like, wait a minute, I'm being, held captive, as opposed to, oh yeah, she's going to pay me $500 a week to write nothing, and then I'm going to get offended when she buys me things.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is just messing with perfection. Who knows? Because they could have cast someone that would have been absolutely terrible, and we've been like, that Joe Gillis, and they should have cast a better actor. Because William Holden is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think just to heighten that side of it. But I guess when I first watched it, I did think that she was a lot older than him. You know, it's just now that I'm over 30.
Yeah, you're
and
like
probably the same age as William Hurt. I'm like, 20 isn't that much difference, you know?
Yeah. Well, and also she doesn't look like a, you know, an old woman.
No,
you know,
she doesn't. Yeah.
But I do think that this film has to be one of the films that Richard Linklater was taking inspiration from while making Bernie.
Oh yeah,
which is one of my favorite films, and we've done a Film Church Radio episode on. And you know, it's not only just the subject matter of like, you know, a younger guy living with an older woman who's like, you know, paying for everything and telling him what to do and stuff, but there's like a line in this film where they're sitting in the car and it's with the narration, but he's like, you know, he's like, she's been teaching me to tango and she's been teaching me what type of wine to have with what type of fish.
Yeah.
And there's a line in Bernie where they're in the courtroom and Matthew McConaughey is like questioning Jack Black, who's playing Bernie. And he's like, you enjoy the finer things in life, right? It's like, you know, like what type of fish to have with what type of wine.
Yeah.
And Jack Black is like, I don't know, white? And he's like, you do know. But it's like, it feels like that's like pulled straight out of this movie, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and that movie is Shirley MacLaine, who was also in The Apartment in a Billy Wilder film. So, you know, interesting connections. I mean, I don't feel like it's that far of a stretch.
No.
I'll ask Linklater.
Yeah, please
day.
do. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that you're right because, you know, like you said, there's too many thematical similarities between those two films.
Yeah.
For him not to have had this in his mind.
Yeah.
You know, and Linklater's such a fan of cinema as a whole that, you know, this has got to be in his lexicon somewhere. He's got to have pulled from it at some point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the whole film, the saddest part of this is that the film idea came about. Billy Wilder went to like a cocktail party, like a really fancy one. And there was like an older guy in the back that was incredibly drunk and like making an ass of himself. And everyone was like, oh, just don't look at him. He'll go away. And Wilder was like, who is that? Why is he here? And they're like, it's just D.W. Griffith. He's like this all the time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. and Griffith died like 3 months later than that. After that, I should say. And like hardly anybody was at his funeral. And it just got Wilder thinking just like, how quickly this town forgets who made it. You know, Hollywood we know wouldn't be the same without D.W. Griffith as much as we try to ignore that. You know?
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing, though, dude. It's like, you know, they forget, but maybe not really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a lot of it is politics, and sometimes, and maybe most of the time, for the right reason. Because you think about like, you know, I mean, I don't know enough about D.W. Griffith, the person, to really make a judgment on him. All I know is that he made
Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, Birth of a Nation. Yeah. You know, like a terribly racist movie, you know. So you can just you can draw assumptions that he's, you know, a terribly racist person, you know. So it's like, you know, most people maybe didn't forget, they just remembered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with like Harvey Weinstein. Like nobody's forgotten about Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah. Just don't talk about him.
Yeah. It's like, why? Yeah. Like nobody's going to promote him either.
Yeah. But
he's not making a comeback. Like,
yeah, with Griffith, I mean, not only was Birth of a Nation insanely popular, but he had such a career after it. I mean, Intolerance is massive. You know, it's I think it's on the AFI top 100 list. You know, like there's more to his career, and there's so many things in cinema that he pioneered, and like you know, shots especially, and like the way the camera moved that were you can trace back to like some of his early films. And for Wilder, who is very much, I mean, he's a director that uses a lot of techniques. His camera is always moving or doing something different. I'm sure that story, like, or that experience just hit home.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's a very interesting film to make when you are the top dog in Hollywood.
Yeah. For sure.
It seems more like a bitter pill than it does a love letter. Because he'd just come out. I mean, Double Indemnity was 6 years before this. Lost Weekend, which won an Oscar, I can't remember what for. That he had gradually, had hit after hit after hit before this.
Yeah.
And then to come out, I mean, I know that at this screening in Hollywood, so many of the, especially producers, were like, "This is garbage. You're ruining, what we're doing."
Yeah.
And he was like, "I don't care."
Yeah.
This is how it is.
I mean, probably a good time in his career to do it too. To do something that you're really passionate about and is paying respects to, your cinema gods of the time and stuff. But I mean, this film was nominated for a ton of Oscars. It only won for it won 3 for best screenplay, best art direction, best music. But it was also nominated. All 4 of the main actors are nominated.
Yeah.
For leading and supporting roles, and then best director, best cinematography, best film editing, and best picture.
Yeah.
And I feel like this film had to have been the favorite, even though it didn't win all of those. You know what I mean?
I think it was the same year as All About Eve.
Yeah, it was.
Which was, I know it swept a few categories. I think Bette Davis won for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actor, maybe. Which I'm not. I personally, I don't think All About Eve is a better film than Sunset Boulevard, but I can see why it was successful. It's not one of those things where it's like, what were they thinking? It was a very strong year. And I think it's probably the same with Hitchcock. I know that Wilder had a bit more look at the Oscars, but it's kind of highbrow for the masses in a way.
Yeah.
It's not pandering to us, but it's very accessible as a movie. Where All About Eve is a bit more fast talking and the characters are very sophisticated, and where this is a gumshoe. This is a regular Joe.
Yeah.
So I can tell why the Academy didn't go for it, but it should have won everything. I mean, the fact that Norma Desmond, Gloria Swanson, there I go again. Gloria Swanson didn't win Best Actress for this is a travesty.
Yeah, she definitely deserved it. She was, like you said, it's one of the all-time great characters.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
But just to do a quick little run through, I'm going to read through some of my notes here and just point out a few things that I really loved about this movie. And most of them are just quick little jokes, but in the beginning, the producer's reason for not loaning Joe the money, where he's just like, well, I had to take a loan on this, and was great. Some of these I already mentioned, but there's a great line. I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Mm-hmm.
I love Max on the organ.
Yeah,
it's such a great. You feel it. You think that it's just the soundtrack of the film, but then he goes inside and Max is just in there.
Yeah,
playing away.
Yeah.
Amazing. When Norma when they're watching the film and she stands up and the lighting from the projector is hitting her face is such a great moment and shot. Let's see.
I love the way in that scene just before she does that, her hand slithers around his arm and it's so talon-like. I don't know, she's so serpent Like in the first like half of this film, even her nostrils kind of look snake-like. It's weird to say, but she's very like coiled and just like, I don't know. She slithers. It's bizarre. It's such an interesting way to do it,
Yeah, for sure. Also with the scene where she's like laying, it's like after the ball and she's like laying there on the couch, I guess, and she has like the cigarette holder thing, which I've never seen one of those before.
Yeah.
And he even mentions it in the narration or whatever. But she's like drunk and she's like acting drunk too.
Yeah.
And he's like talking about money and she's like, what about money? I've got $1 million. Like,
yeah.
It's just like one of the best lines. And I don't know. It's just, I mean, obviously it's all about her performance, but that it's just like the way that she says that is great. And then when Joe goes to the party and his friend, this just stood out to me, but his friend, I guess maybe they couldn't say Jesus H. Christ. So he's like Judas H. Priest.
Do you know when he shows up at that party and there's like 3 or 4 people around the piano singing? It's the song Buttons and Bows. Which I only know really from Frasier. But when I was doing some research, it turns out that they had won, maybe not the Oscar, but some award for that song like the year before. So it was like for being in a particular film. So it was like one of, their friends are real people that are working in the industry. It's like another one of those little things that are like just thrown in, and you wouldn't even think about it as a viewer today.
Yeah, exactly.
But seeing it in 1950, you would have been like, hey, I know this song. That won Best Song last year, or whatever. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that I mean, that's what makes this film so great. I think is that you can watch it and it's not exactly a fairy tale.
No, yeah,
it's got so many layers of realism in there.
Yeah,
which I think is great. And I love the moment we were talking about it earlier when she's, being right before she's surrounded by all of the people, she goes and sits down in the studio, and the first thing that happens is like a microphone comes into the frame, just to be like that extra layer of like pettiness or whatever. She's like, get this out of here.
And I don't know in that scene if this is what we're supposed to get from it, but when she sees, I think his name's Hog Eye, and it's the guy that's like up in the rafters, and she's like, hello, Hog Eye. And it's like obvious that she cannot remember for the life of him who this guy is.
Yeah.
Just the way that she just repeats it back. I always find that really funny, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to, but
I mean, probably,
Yeah.
I also love that moment when he's sitting in the room, waiting to like sneak out. And she's like, he's like, I haven't been doing anything, and she's like, of course you haven't, I won't let you. And she's like pulling on his hair, and then she like walks out the door, and then there's like eyes on the door handles.
Yeah.
And then they just like blink off.
Yeah.
It's so creepy and cool. I don't know. And then I was also just thinking about like the differences between Betty and Norma. Mm-hmm. It's like, he like falls in love with Betty, who's this younger woman or whatever.
Yeah.
But then like her whole story of like, Hollywood's been in my family for 2 generations, and they wanted me to be an actress and yada yada yada, and she's like doesn't want to be an actress anymore. She wants to be behind the camera.
Yeah.
It's just like a perfect contrast, between Betty and Norma, because she doesn't want anything to do with being in front of the camera.
And I think it's also about, because Wilder did write all his films, it's about being a writer as well. I mean, Norma tells him that he's brilliant all the time and that, what he's doing is right. Whereas Betty's the one that's like, no, you need to push yourself. Like, this is not good. But there's something in there that you can accomplish, So, of course, he falls in love with her because she's the one that's pushing him, that's making him,
And making him a better writer too.
Yeah,
apparently.
exactly. Yeah.
Based on everything we know about this guy, he's never written anything good.
Yeah, I love his thing for bases loaded, and the guy's like, "Let me guess." He needs to throw it, and he's like, "Yeah, you're right, but I've got a great twist at the end." And it's like, "No, you haven't. It's going to be exactly the same as every other baseball movie."
Yeah. So I do have a question about the ending of this film.
Mm-hmm.
And before Joe is shot,
Yes.
he has Betty come over.
Yes.
And he shows her all the pictures of Norma and whatever, and basically makes Betty feel terrible and kicks her out.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Go back to your fiance."
Yeah.
Was that all a front? Because we never really find out. Like I thought maybe that was just that he. At first, it seemed like he was just doing that to please Norma, so that he could escape one more time and then never come back.
I always read it as he's showing her his dirty secret. You know, he's kind of being like, this is why I've been acting so weird, is because I've been in this relationship with this older woman for the past, however long the film, 6 months, however long it is.
Yeah.
And he's like, I think that if he kind of shows somebody it, he'll be free. He'll be able to, because he's not keeping it a secret anymore. It's not like this big thing. So that's why he immediately, I think, walks out, because he's like, I've done it. Like, people know what's been happening. They know the real me. Because I think it's like, it's guilt. He's ashamed that he's been doing it. He's basically been, selling himself for money.
Yeah.
So I think that part of it is like, I'm free now. I've exercised my demons. I've confessed to what I've been doing.
Yeah.
But then he gets shot like 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the fact that he gets shot in the back, stumbles, but then just walks straighter. He just straightens up like, no, I'm leaving. Yeah, I'm leaving this place.
Yeah, she shoots him and he like stands up like, "Oh, finally got that thing out." That little crick in my back.
Clips his heels and carries on.
Yeah. Yeah, and then obviously you get the final scene of Gloria Swanson coming down the stairs, which apparently when Gloria Swanson finished the scene, she burst into tears, and the crew applauded, even though it wasn't the last scene filmed. Billy Wilder threw a party for her as soon as the shot was finished.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it had to have been surreal for her to be like this huge silent film star and then to do this film that allows her to really show what she can do as an actress. And then that moment of her walking down the stairs has so many layers of character in it that, she knew that was her moment.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Max is directing her as well is just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
This guy that's been with her through the whole thing, and she doesn't love him anymore, but she's using him, for companionship and everything. It's just, it's such a beautiful touch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eric von Stroheim did try and throw some things in to get filmed. So the whole thing of him writing the fan mail was his idea, which they really loved and kind of ran with. He had another suggestion that Billy Wilder didn't add, of having a scene with him washing her like undergarments. And Wilder was like, we don't need that. We know that you're obsessed with it because you're working as a butler. We don't need to see you fondle her undergarments,
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I love Eric von Stroheim. I think he's so good in this. So reserved and just like, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Everybody is. The 3 leads are just incredible.
Yeah. The 4 of them all got nominated.
Yeah.
Which is just,
Yeah.
if like your four mains are all nominated, there's got to be something to it.
Did something right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think we've said
Yeah.
all we can say. Now we're just going to be silent.
And I'm trying to think if there's any more tidbits I can share, but I think that's all of it.
Yeah.
There's probably so much more, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure this is like an incredibly layered film. But if you think of anything, leave a comment on our in the comment section on our YouTube channel of this episode, and we'll give you a reply. We'll let you know what we think.
Yeah.
Your comments and thoughts. I think we should. Well, I already know what you've rated this film because you had seen it before, and I saw your Letterboxd rating. So I know you rated it 5 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to guess what I rated this film.
So I'm torn because I think it's 5. I'm just going to go with 5. I'm going to let my heart rule.
I think it's a 4.
Okay, cool.
I think it's going to take a few more watches. It's like I love film, obviously. I've got a film podcast with Lewis. But I'm not as deeply into the silent era as you are. You know what I mean? I think eventually this will be a 5. You know, this will be something I watch a few more times and as well as The Apartment and probably any other Wilder film I see. But I'm not quite there yet, I think.
Yeah. You know? I think for me it's one of the, there's a few films I feel like this, but it's one of those films that when I watch it, I'm just like, I am just so happy that this film was made when it was. That I get this film to watch whenever I want. Yeah. And I think that only, it just shows for me just how personal it is. It's everything I could want from Hollywood looking at itself. Mm-hmm. And it's directed by one of my favorite directors. It's just, it's perfect.
Yeah. Awesome.
100 out of 5.
Cool. Well, do you know what we're watching next week?
I don't, but my good friend Andy does. Andy and I worked together at Universal Studios in 2012. So coming up on our 10-year anniversary as friends, or we are nearly over. Oh dear. Next year is 2023. Andy and I have been friends for a really long time. He is a big film fan, just like us. And I love talking to him about films that we've been watching, and he just has the greatest insights. So I'm super excited for him to join us next week. And I'm going to hand it over to him to tell us what we're going to be watching.
All right.
Thanks, guys. I am super excited to be joining you both next week. Lewis, it's been about 3,782 days since we're friends. I know that you're not counting, but I am. So it's nice to know that we have a very strong and healthy friendship. In keeping with the idea of loving film and loving movies, I've chosen the 1999 documentary American Movie about a man and his friends who tried to create a short film that he is very, very passionate about. Really looking forward to joining you guys and talking about it more.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Sweet. Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
This is a film that I've tried to watch a few times, and I picked times that I was too sleepy.
Yeah.
Not that it was a bad movie. I just poor timing on my part.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that I'm actually going to watch this and discuss it.
Me too. It's going to be a good one.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the show, everybody. You, of course, can find us in the meantime on our social media channels, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook and YouTube, at Film Church Radio. You can also find us on Letterboxd, which is a social media app for film lovers to log the films they've been watching and write reviews and rate movies, add things to their watch list. You can find Lewis at WalkerLewis3007, and I am at Selman Scope. Yeah, it's a great app. I would suggest people getting on it. You can, if you're wondering what movies we have seen or if we've seen a certain movie, you can, once you add us as a follow, you can search for that film and see if we've seen it or not. And usually Lewis and I are pretty good at rating things, so you can see what we rated it. Yeah. Give us a shout. We'd love to hear from you. Welcome to the congregation if this is your first time. We'll see you next week, everybody. I just have one thing left to say. Wait a minute. I haven't seen you before. I know your face.
Get out! Or shall I call my servant?
You're L.A. Walker. You used to be in silent pictures. You used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Amen.
Amen.
We'll see y'all next week. In color, with our faces and voices.
That's right, I'm ready. I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille.
All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.